What are some very creepy facts? The Colombian serial killer Pedro Alonso Lopez, who is known as the Monster of the Andes, raped and murdered over 300 girls from Ecuador, Peru and Colombia. However, after he was caught and imprisoned for 18 years, he was put in a psychiatric hospital. There he was reviewed, declared to be sane, and was set free, in spite of his blatant avowal that he fully intends to kill again. Since he was released in 1998, nobody knows where he is or what he's doing. He is supposed to be 71 years old at present. He is known for being the most prolific killer ever. If you get a blood transfusion and get the wrong type of blood at B.O. of one of the symptoms, is a sense of impending doom. There is a genetic disease called fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva. When tissue is damaged, it is replaced with bone. Growths form underneath their skin and their joints lock solid. So over time those affected slowly become encased in a prison of bone just beneath their own, usually have to choose between sitting or standing up for the rest of their life. By the end of their life they have to drink every meal through a straw and can barely move. Over 90 of serial killers choose their victims through sexual desire. In fact, many serial killers have been caught because they return to the body of their victims to masturbate. Lions of years and still be viably infectious, and having never encountered humanity before, could have no end of catastrophic results should they be uncovered and manage to infect a person or animal. Not to worrying though, it's not like millions of ancient pathogens are currently trapped in permafrost, which is now melting bit by bit each and every day. Humans' eyes don't reflect light at night like animals do. I like to say this fact to my wife at a campfire. Your eyes have a separate immune system from the rest of your body. Why get damaged in such a way that it affects anything other than your eyes? Your regular immune system can attack the damage and will not recognize them, meaning your own body can permanently blind you. What's worse, your body cannot tell the difference between either eye. If one of them gets infected or damaged, your immune system can attack your healthy eye and take away your sight entirely. Remember that bath salts cannibal guy from a couple years back. He wasn't high on bath salts when he did that. That was just media speculation and bullshit. They only found pot in his system during the autopsy. We still have no idea why he flipped out. The men of the ship Essex, the true event that inspires the story Moby Dick avoid islands after being shipwrecked for fear of cannibals. The islands were settled and landing there would have brought salvation to the survivors. Ironically, because of this bypass, the men ran out of food and were forced to eat each other for survival. There is a fungus, cordyceps, that can actually brain control insects, forcing them to move to a higher location where they will eventually die and release more cordyceps spores. Eat sailors, they don't really decompose because it's at freezing temperatures, so they instead get a coating of adipose, think that's how it's spelled, which is liquid body fat, harden around them. Gordon Lightfoot wasn't lying when he wrote "The lake never gives up her dead." Source: the lake that never gives up her dead, ask a mortician. In 1975 the CIA had a heart attack gun. It kills people, and then the dart denigrates. Just imagine what is classified now. A fire whirl can go as big as an EF3 tornado. In 1923, such happened in Japan during an earthquake C5.8D earthquake. The son of a bitch killed 38,000 people in less than 15 minutes. Elmer McCurdy was a failed Old West outlaw. His preserved body was put on display in a traveling carnival, and years later, he was eventually assumed to be a mannequin, until he was used on set for the TV show The $6 Million Man. His arm accidentally fell off during the shoot, revealing bone and muscle and that he was a corpse, not a mannequin. Lur would be super duper quiet and pretend like he was gone, and right when the poor victims would start to move towards the phone or try to untie themselves, he would scare the fucking shit out of them. One reason that crows and ravens are associated with death is because they would often follow armies as they march to battle. Being both carrion birds and extremely intelligent, they realized that a large group of armed men marching on one direction meant that there would be a tasty meal of corpses to eat soon afterwards. Crocodiles can gallop like a horse. I don't like knowing this, so I am cursing you people with this knowledge as well. Fortunately, alligators cannot. Your brain can play tricks on you to make you see monsters in the mirror, called the Troxler effect. The Troxler effect is an optical illusion that affects how you perceive things, both visually and mentally. I once read that you should play dead if a bear attacks you, unless they start licking your wounds, because that means they plan to eat you. That still haunts me to this day. Edit if it helps. I'm pretty sure I was reading about grizzly bears at the time during one of my fevered grizzly man rabbit holes. If the sun exploded right now, you would be blissfully unaware of it for just over 8 minutes, while the energy travels at the speed of light to get to you. There's a spider that gives you a 3 hours long boner before you die from its bite. The boner it gives you is very painful. It wasn't until 1987 that the American Academy of Pediatrics declared it unethical to operate on newborns without anesthesia. Until surprisingly recently, the medical community felt it would be dangerous to give infants anesthesia or believed that they didn't feel pain. Female mummies in ancient Egypt were always more decomposed than their male counterparts. They discovered that this was because male bodies were embalmed a lot sooner than female bodies. Female bodies were kept at the family home until they started to decompose in order to avoid necrophilia at the embalmers. Sense of impending doom is an actual symptom that often precedes your death, usually in cases of heart attack. Very creepy for some of us that suffer from anxiety and panic attacks to begin with. Both share that symptom. Edit, as many of you are pointing out, yes, I used preclude incorrectly. Since 2007, at least 20 detached human feet have been found on the coasts of the Salish Sea. There's a parasite that enters a fish's mouth, eats the tongue and replaces itself as the fish's new tongue. According to Abe Lincoln's bodyguard Crook, he said Lincoln had a dream about his own assassination 3 nights in a row before he was killed. Crook told Lincoln not to go on that fateful night, and all Lincoln said was goodbye. Crook before he went to the play. This was very ODD, as Lincoln always said, good night not goodbye. I bring this up at parties all the time. With the bodies of people who attempted to make the climb. The combination of the extremely cold temperature and the bright snowsuits means that they've become a never-rotting but colorful landmark. Curing is the last thing to go after you die. You just might hear the paramedics and firefighters call off CPR. The origins of vampires, as we know them. Basically, your body has gas build up when you die. I'm not medically inclined enough to explain why. Basically, the gas has to escape somehow, and so it would pass through the vocal cords in the throat. This creates the low moan that makes the body sound as if it was in pain. The people back then had no idea what was happening, and random bodies would just start moaning in pain. And thus they believed that the bodies were rising from the dead, and when stabbed, the gas escaped otherwise. Thus leading to the belief that the only way to stop a vampire was to stab a dead body in the chest. This also led to a lot of strange burials, i.e. the man that was buried in a stone wall to prevent him from rising from the dead. I can't really blame them. I'd be freaked out too if a corpse suddenly started to make sounds. Creepy for some, but I find stuff like that fascinating. There's documentaries on YT talking about it. I highly recommend them. Edit, words cannot describe how happy I am that so many of you provided additional facts. I'm having a blast reading your comments. I don't know much about this topic, and so it's great to have a place where more information and leads are constantly being shared. This is the documentary that I saw, but there's a ton of others out there with more possibly better information. If you have any recommendations yourselves, please link them in your comment. I'd love to see them. CNN has had a pre-recorded broadcast from the 90s, which they will premiere during the end of the world. From Atlas Obscura by Foer, Thures, and Morton, Necropens, readers' discretion advised. In Iceland, a long-ass time ago 17c, friends followed complex rules to obtain a dead man's skin to turn them into pants. 1. You had to get permission from the dude to use his skin after he kicked the bucket. 2. You would then wait until burial formalities concluded. 3. You would rob the shit out of your buddy's grave. 4. You would cut the waist and peel the bottom half of the body off in one perfect flay. 5. You would then steal a coin from a poor widow, preferably your bud's. 6. Place the coin in the scrotum of the necropens to attract cosmic shit, specifically more wealth in life, and leave the groin full of coins at all times. 7. Pass that shit down to your kid. Fun fact, the Museum of Icelandic Sorcery and Witchcraft has a pair on display for all of us sickos to gawk steal. You are right, it's folklore. What is creepy is that they dedicated a museum to all of this fucking metal folklore and bothered to create a replica of a very disturbing idea. I just thought the storytelling would be fun. And lo and behold, I had some amazing comments come from it. People don't take their anti-malarial drugs and they travel because they hear bad stories about the side effects, and they see native people in the areas living okay without taking pills every day. Nations native to malaria endemic areas have all passed through pretty intense natural selection for survival and have a host of genes that prevent them from dying or suffering the other worst defects. Also, Most of the resistance is built up over time. This is why it's most common for children to die rather than adults. Whatever people have heard about the side effects of the anti-malarials, getting it is so much worse. I, fortunately, have never had it, but I study as part of my work and people have told me about having it, and they all say the same thing: it is so awful you can't believe you're even still alive. It comes in cycles, usually 48 hours, and each cycle is agonizing and brings you the brink of death. Sometimes it takes you. Sometimes it spares you for another few hours until it starts again. And there are forms that, even if you clear the infection with drugs, it still remains dormant in your system and can come back at any time. Edit: I don't want to freak people out too much. There are drug combinations that can kill every stage of the parasite as long as there is no drug resistance. To stonefish, an incredibly venomous fish living in tropical waters, mostly off the coast of Australia and parts of US, can cause pain that only escalates with time. Eventually the pain will subside, but even after the barb is removed, patients have reported increasing pain 12 hours later. Without antivenom or denaturing the venom with excessive heat, the pain builds and builds until the patients request euthanasia. Its spines hold the venom, hidden in its dorsal fins. T-barrier reef have corroborees, large gatherings, and will during these gatherings hold reenactments of people being stung by this monster for what I assume is either amusement, learning, or both. Edit: corroboree clarification. Edit: to pain does eventually end. Reminded of suicide tree, where pain does not. Terrible leaves foretold you for all the upvotes. So glad one of my parents' horror stories from Australia is so well received. A black mamba is the fastest snake, which can slither at a speed of 12.5 miles an hour, 20 km/h. They have neurotoxins, which are fast-acting. The venom shuts down the nervous system and paralyzes the victim. Its venom is able to kill 10 people, and it repeatedly bites. To add on to this, there is an almost 100 kill rate and can kill in 20 minutes. If you begin to display symptoms of rabies, you will go crazy and die. There's no cure. Your brain will slowly melt until you're dead. Men who are hanged get a death erection, known as Ritter awkward for the family, I assume. More than 7,000 people die annually due to the doctor's bat. I didn't expect this to blow up so much. So if you upvoted my comment, thanks so much. Sometimes an Amber Alert causes kidnappers to panic and kill the kid immediately. Edit: for those that don't know what an Amber Alert is. While this got way more attention than I expected, this is very rare, and most of the time, Amber Alerts are issued for kids taken by an estranged family member where the kid is in no danger. Amber Alerts have also saved hundreds of lives. For those that keep asking for a source, sorry for bumming y'all out. They used real corpses in the 1980 to film Poltergeist for the ending pool scene. The actress did not know until after the scene was filmed. Cockroaches have been recorded eating human flesh, both living and dead, as well as fingernails, eyelashes, feet, and hands. The American cockroach and German cockroach are more likely to bite humans than other species. Pretty sure Australian cockroaches do something equally creepy. But as an Australian who plans to sleep at some point in the future, I'm not going to Google it. Blobfish in its natural habitat looks like a normal fish, but it lives so deep underwater that it doesn't use a normal gas bladder to keep itself balanced. Instead, it has a spongy skin that is slightly less dense than water, which becomes damaged and bloated when fishermen bring it up to us. Not really the ugliest fish. It has just experienced something worse than one of us being thrown into outer space. Between sea level and space, there's one atmospheric pressure of difference. Between sea level and 2,000 feet underwater, their upper limit, there's 60 atmospheres of difference. Contrary to popular belief, the Space Shuttle Challenger did not explode. The fuel tank it was attached to did, and it forced the shuttle to change direction so quickly that aerodynamic forces tore it apart. The crew module survived the initial breakup, and it's believed that some of the astronauts were conscious for the long fall back to Earth. Upon inspecting the wreckage, NASA also determined that some of the switches were thrown, indicating that the pilot vainly tried to fly what was left of the shuttle before it crashed into the ocean. It was once discovered that a fir tree was growing inside a human body. Artyom Sidorkin went to the doctors suspecting something wrong with his lungs. The doctors thought they were dealing with a tumor, but turns out he had inhaled a fir tree seed, which had sprouted and had begun growing in his Wow So Grey's Anatomy. It's a popular show. I'm sure this was the inspiration for that episode. If you stifle a sneeze, there's a chance you can damage organs in your head. including eye blood vessels, rupturing your eardrums, and possibly rupture a brain aneurysm, which means there's a small chance stifling a sneeze can kill you. Deader to be the loud ass with the sneeze that can be heard around the world, and a dead loud ass cause someone told you to stifle that sneeze. Ducks become cannibals due to boredom. Of all fucking reasons. They can only be stopped by cutting off their mouths. If you're in a boat directly over the deepest point of the Marianas Trench, and you have a passenger jet cruising at 30,000 feet above you, you are closer to the jet than to the bottom of the ocean. Edit to wow, didn't expect this to blow up. Here's another interesting but not creepy fact about the Pacific Ocean. Every single landmass on Earth, if combined together, is still smaller than the Pacific Ocean itself. Edit 3 No. I never joke about Pacific facts. If you live to age 70, you will have shed around 105 pounds of because most seem confused. I mean over time, not all at once, that would be terrible. Half of your favorite 70s rock stars had 14-year-old girlfriends. Edit wow. I have been a Redditor for over 8 years. My previous highest comment was less than 200 upvotes, and I finally get to say it rip inbox. D to find out how many were. I hope society is moving past where this is seen as remotely. And again, people still work with Roman Polanski, and he was actually convicted of drugging and raping a 13-year-old. Fuck him. 13, 14-year-olds are children. Protect children. Don't sexualize them. It's not that enjoying the artistic work of bad people is an interesting issue. I still listen to lots of the music in question, but I don't think I would if these were active artists and it was known I wasn't alive in the 70s. And I certainly don't support them financially well, any more than Spotify plays, so I guess I do to some degree. In Polanski's case, I have seen some of his older movies, but never paid for one. I wouldn't support him financially in any way, and I wouldn't watch anything he makes at this point. Aziz Ansari, who had an interesting bit asking the audience who still listens to R. Kelly, not a lot of hands, then later in the set asked who still listens to Michael Jackson, lots of hands and cheers. I think there is an issue of perceived guilt and also of artistic quality that plays into people's. I don't believe you should actively support known predators. That very distinct vacuum smell, like that smell from the content you vacuumed up, comes from dead skin cells. In the US, if someone is kidnapped and not found within about a day, then there is a 97% chance the kidnapped person is dead. In the Czech Republic, there is a church called the Sedlic Ossuary that has decorations made entirely of human bones. This happened because there were too many people in the cemetery to bury everyone. And the church leaders claimed that if their bones became part of the church, it only made them closer to God. Nice propaganda spin there. Guys, the smell of a freshly cut lawn is actually a chemical distress signal released from the grass as it's cut. You're smelling the souls and screaming of the innocent. A Japanese secret human experimentation group called Unit 731 performed experiments on infants, children and adults without anesthetic. They would cut out stomachs and attach the esophagus to the intestines. Remove limbs and see how long people would die from blood loss. Remove parts of livers, brains and other organs. They would expose people to diseases and then dissected them alive. In all, an estimated 500,000 people were killed in these experiments. Unit 731 was given immunity from prosecution by the US government in order for the US to get access to the results of the experiments. Edit 1 to say that the above descriptions really only touch on the surface of the horrors that were performed by Unit 731. If you are squeamish, I would not recommend reading into this any further. Edit 2 to join the dots. Much of what we know about how the body responds to different traumas came from these experiments, so every time you are treated in a hospital, you are indirectly benefiting from these experiments. Roach are natural burrowers. They also can't walk backwards. There have been cases where they burrow into people's ears but cannot get themselves out. There are roughly 2,000 serial killers at FBI cannot find them, or they are too good at their craft. John Harvey Kellogg was a prude, so he and his brother invented cornflakes and recommend cutting your foreskin to stop males from wonking. For females, he suggested rubbing carbolic acid on the clitoris, but fortunately, it didn't catch on in the West. Go to Zvoy. Massive area of space where around 2,000 galaxies should be, but only 60 are. No one knows why. So far, the best hypothesis is that a race of aliens is creating an absurd amount of Dyson spheres and blocking out the light from those. Thanks for all the karma. Edit also, there are some comments that this comes from disturbances in the Big Bang, or that it could be a collection of smaller voids that have come together. These are also good theories, and ones that are less creepy. That said, if it's the Big Bang, then the base theory of the Big Bang according to what I am reading will have to change. If it's the smaller voids, then our model of the universe will have to change. T's creepy, because it could be any of these, and the best minds in the world are at least slightly wrong, or that there is something out there that we don't have any working idea of where it came from. This is the modern-day equivalent of Baba Yaga. Take care of the planet, or the void will eat it. Kens eat chicken nuggets. But what if our chickens was half eaten by a fox and in the morning, another one of our chickens came over to it, pecked it in the head and started eating its sister's entrails? It's quite common after you die to burp a lot as you have more gas buildup. Dead bodies can also sit up on their own sometimes. In 2015, a young woman began to have headaches. They discovered that she had a brain tumor, and when the doctors removed it, they were shocked to see that it was a lump resembling skin that contained bone, teeth, and hair. But this was no parasitic twin. The mass was called a teratoma, or monstrous tumor. When the woman was an embryo, some cell tissue fell off and ended up where it wasn't supposed to be, her brain. It then developed hair and teeth while the rest of her grew as normal. Edit holy fucking shit, over 5.0k upvotes. Thank you guys so much. Jeffrey Dahmer tried to make sex zombies out of some of his victims by drilling holes in their heads while they were still alive and pouring acid into the holes. Fatal familial insomnia is the scariest shit I've ever heard of. If you get it, you cannot sleep and you stay awake until you die. One person was even put into a coma, but their brainwaves continued to register, meaning there's absolutely no way to totally be asleep. Terrifying. Memories can be passed through genes, so those weird fears you have, it might just be something that was passed down through your genes from an ancestor who had a reason to fear it. Text certain 20 fears. 20 can 20 be 20 inherited. Provocative 20 study 20 of 20 mice 20 reports. Text according 20 to 20 convention to see 20 the 20 genetic. Transmit 20 biological 20 information 20 across 20 generations. 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually abused before they turn 18 years old, usually by someone they know and trust. I remember reading that on a poster in my middle school hallway, thinking it wouldn't be me, because my family and friends were all kind people. Turns out Grandpa didn't love me the way I thought he did. I find that the most disturbing facts are space-related, and also, it's crazy to me how little we truly know of the mysterious universe. To think we are smart because we are the most intelligent thing we know of. But when you look at the galaxies roaming the universe on a near-infinite scale, the possibilities are legitimately endless. I heard that the size of the observable universe compared to the expansion of the Big Bang 13.8 billion years ago, that the size of the actual universe could be as much as 900 times bigger, and light just hasn't traveled far enough to reach us. Could you imagine the size of that? It's inconceivable. I hope that when we die, we get to go to a dimension where we just know everything about everything and all mysterious things are revealed. And when we have enough time exploring everything again, we can choose to be born as life again on some other planet and face our own challenges from a different perspective. Disneyland has a big problem with ashes. So many people were spreading ashes of their loved ones that Disney had to buy a special vacuum cleaner that cleans away human ashes. So the Haunted Mansion is actually haunted. They say the Haunted Mansion has 999 souls, but always room for one more. Well, a few years ago Disney auctioned off a custom tombstone to the highest bidder to be put in the rye as the 1000th soul. So once that person dies, their grave is in Disneyland. A fact and more of an uncomfortable truth, but it would be very easy for a determined individual to break into your place of residence and kill you at just about any time that you aren't expecting them. Even worse is that if they do it cleanly and have no relationship with you, they stand a decent chance of getting away with it. Edit for clarity, I said determined individual because most normal locks, dogs, weapons, walls, fences, cameras, lights, etc. will be enough to deter thieves or just some whack job. The point of my comment is to say that if someone genuinely wants to get you, either they will or they'll die trying, and odds are, if you aren't expecting it, the first thing is what will happen. When you happen to be murdered, there is only an about 40% chance that your murderer will be found and punished. Edit a lot of people are asking which country I'm referring to. This is a worldwide approximation. There are obviously countries with higher percentages of solved murder cases, but also some with even lower. For example, in the US there is a 40% chance to get away with murder, in Mexico 90% to get away with it. Organized crime. The overall amount of crimes in that area and war plays a huge role in this. Assuming, of course, you're a student who attends school in a classroom, the single most important factor that determines whether or not you may be shot by a school shooter is a locked door. No one has ever died in a school shooting if they were behind a locked classroom door. Pilots in Pakistan who fly thousands of people a year paid for their pilot's license and did not actually go to school training. Pakistan's aviation minister told Parliament on Wednesday that a large number of commercial pilots hold fake licenses or cheated in exams. It comes as an initial report into a PIA crash that killed 97 people last month found the cause to be human error by the pilot and air traffic control. Mr. Khan said investigations had found that more than 260 of the country's 860 active pilots had either fake licenses or had cheated in there. One day, years after you're dead, the last person alive with a memory of your existence will have thought of you for the very last time. When creating the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland, they couldn't create skeletons that looked realistic enough, so they used real human skeletons. They've since removed all of them except one. Our graves will be reused for someone else unless you're memorable, which in the 99% of the time, we won't be, so we better start thinking of badass ways we can be buried. If we're cremated, then forget about being remembered past one generation unless you name a park or building after yourself. A bubble caused by false vacuum decay could be expanding through our galaxy right now, destroying everything it touches. And we wouldn't even know about it, because it travels at the speed of to all the people who have given existential dread with this comment. I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking of it as scary as much as just creepy. And as others have pointed out already, it's hypothetical at this point, so try not to work about it. Henry VIII was so fat that when he died his body produced so much gas that he exploded in his coffin much like a whale. UVB-76, also known as the buzzer, is believed to be a Russian shortwave radio station. It has been mysteriously broadcasting the same signal since 1982. No one knows where the signal is coming from or why. It sounds like low buzzing with the occasional Russian voice transmission, probably some gopniks in their bunker. In 1961, Yale psychologist Stanley Milgram conducted an experiment in which he had a test subject enter a room with a control panel with controls for a fake electroshock device. He instructed the subjects to shock an unseen student every time they answered a math question wrong through a microphone, as well as to increase voltage with every error. X2OB. Unbeknownst to the test subjects, the students were all actors speaking into microphones from another room. They all failed their questions purposefully to get shocked, intensely screaming the whole time. X2OB. Many subjects consensually killed their respective student by the time it was over with light pressure added by the researchers. This might not be very creepy, but there are no laws against cannibalism in the USA. You might be arrested for something else, but not for cannibalism. Edit. I would like to clarify that I am in no way a practitioner of law. I don't know the specifics of what you would be arrested for. This was just a random fact floating in my brain. Edit. To most of the USA lacks these laws. It seems Idaho had some incidents, leading to them being the only state with anti-cannibalism laws. Thank you for informing me. You'll know who you are. So this happened to a friend of my mother. She would refuse to tell me his name, meaning I must know this guy. He was a regular guy, married. I don't know if he had kids, and this happened. But the thing is, he suddenly started to feel attracted to little kids at his late 30s. He said whenever he was near little kids he was unable to stop having thoughts. He confessed it to his wife when he realized he couldn't control this sexual attraction towards minors because he was genuinely troubled about this. The guy sought clinical help and, after a while, they discovered he had a tumor in his brain. Once removed the tumor, his pedophilic thoughts just disappeared. Edit. I just realized this is not a fact. So, fact, a brain tumor can make you a pedophile. Think you're safe using incognito mode to watch your daily dose of tentacle porn. Ever knew the fact that Wi-Fi routers keep logs of where you visit and that the owner of the router can check it freely? Any story about cosmonauts during the space race? Russia only wanted to get to space first. It didn't matter how many failed missions were between them and succeeding. It was all trial and error. If somebody didn't survive an attempt, they were wiped from history. Any documentation destroyed, including being edited out of photographs. One story that I remember is the first man to free walk in space, Alexei Leonov 3 fam. True. They didn't account for the pressure difference when making his suit, so when he stepped out the suit expanding to the point of nearly falling apart and he couldn't fit back in through the door. He had to release the oxygen from the suit to deflate it enough to get back inside. Another one is the Giudica Cordiglio brothers. This one may be considered more conspiracy theory, and as far as I know the recordings are real. They were radio operators who picked up signals of very distressed-sounding Russian voices and an SOS signal drifting away from Earth. When translated, the voices were calling for help, saying history would forget them, and saying it is getting very apparently the recordings were not real, so disregard that section. Definitely creepy, not so much fact. If you hold up a disembodied head, don't do it by the hair, sew it by the sides of the head, because it will rip off the decayed scalp and a lot of skin. Another creepy fact is that one can die from drinking water. It has to be 9 liters of water at once and you're a dead man. Please don't try it. If you live in a major city, there's a high chance that you walk past a home with someone trapped inside today. There is an insect the size of a human hand, called a tree lobster. Luckily, can only be found in Ball's Pyramid Island, Australia.